technology, diversity, wine, the redwoods, and everything in between. Welcome to the Northern California Bay Area, and one show takes you inside the real estate that makes it all happen. This is By the Bay.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of By the Bay. I'm your host, Dan Anchetta, and I'm really grateful that you're here. So please do like and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or on YouTube if you're watching this video. And thank you for being here, and I appreciate you being loyal followers of the show and for the comments and DMs we've been getting lately about the different topics that you want to hear about. And today I am very, very lucky to have Savannah Wellander on the show.
Thank you.
She's a realtor at W Real Estate in Sonoma, California. And we connected through social.
Yeah.
Right?
How anyone meets, I think.
Right.
Now.
It was so funny. It's like, that's how everyone meets clients. That's how everyone meets people. I think we just started connecting on Instagram. Mm-hmm. Somehow you came across my feed and we started chatting and got coffee and we're like, hey, we're kind of each other's vibe. Let's hang out and do some deals together. And then I was like, hey, I do this podcast thing. Why don't you come check it out? So for people who don't know you, why don't you introduce yourself, kind of tell us about your background in real estate, what your focus is, kind of how you got to being in Sonoma, because you're not a Sonoma native.
Right.
Yeah. Kind of give us the background.
So let's see. Originally from Reno,
Nevada.
Oh
my goodness.
Right. Humble beginnings. So grew up an only child. I was super into sports, played soccer pretty intensely. And then at one point, I did soccer and gymnastics. And at one point they were like, okay, you got to pick, right? You need to get like really serious about one thing. So I picked soccer, and that ended up leading me to playing in Europe and kind of,
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Great. So that was kind of during high school. I left to go play in Europe for a little bit in Sweden, and that kind of helped.
How did this not come up in conversation when we had coffee?
Have you not seen the tattoos?
I haven't. That's amazing. I did not know that. I'm a huge soccer fan.
Yeah.
Like huge
Massively.
soccer fan.
Yeah.
And I did not know that. So you played in Sweden.
Played in Sweden. And then I came back.
Okay.
And when I was going to finish school, I'd had all this pressure to go play D1, and I had all these, amazing opportunities, right? And could have taken any of them. But there was just this thing in me where that's kind of the only thing I had ever been known for, was like, will come up to me. That's what they want to talk about. They want to talk about soccer, hear about soccer, know what I'm doing, where I'm going. And I just had this overwhelming feeling of like, I don't want to do this anymore, right? I don't want to like go play so seriously in college and just have that be another thing that, for the next 4 years, I'm going to be committed to being this like soccer player.
Okay.
So on a whim, my coach had got a call from Napa Valley College, and they were starting a women's team, and they wanted kind of like a key player. And so they had reached out to see if I would be interested in helping them start a women's program there. And I had been to Napa growing up with my parents.
Okay.
They would bring me to like, I don't know, wine events and things like that, right? When it was like $5.
Sure.
When it used to be cheap. And you used to be able to bring kids. But I thought, man, I've been to Napa. It was pretty. And so I told
Napa's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I just wanted somewhere to go.
Right.
I just wanted somewhere to go where it felt like I could start to be the person that I wanted to grow into, whatever that was going to be. So I decided on Napa. I packed up my car the day I graduated high school. I drove to Napa. I didn't have a place to stay. So the first day I stayed in my car. I actually don't know if my parents know that.
Breaking news here on the podcast. Okay, so you just like packed up your stuff, drove down here, had no plan.
No plan. And I told my coach, we were going into training the next day. I said, hey, coach, I don't have anywhere to live. He's like, okay, well, we'll find you something. So I ended up staying in this cottage, whatever. It was beautiful. It was on this amazing property.
Of course, it's like this beautiful accessory dwelling that opens up to a vineyard. It's like you have the hot air balloons going overhead. That's how I imagine it.
It was
okay.
Chef's kiss.
Okay.
It was picturesque. And I knew the second I got here, I was like, there's nowhere to go from here that is more beautiful. But then it started to be all the people that I was meeting. And when I got into Sonoma, I met my now husband, Jared, who was born and raised there. But when I got into Sonoma, all these people that I were meeting, they were all business owners. So I don't come from a business owner background. My parents are W-2 employees through and through. My mom's a nurse practitioner. My dad worked for the state of Nevada. So they're very 9 to 5. Like, they did not understand
like the
what I was
entrepreneurship
going to
thing.
do, the entrepreneur thing.
Excuse me.
And so then I got into the fitness industry and was helping some studio owners open up gyms, and, got really into training and personal training. And
So like the
teaching
soccer background led into fitness.
Yeah.
And then, so like you've always been a competitor in
Yes.
some way, right? So like do you thrive off the competition? Does
I
it
want
drive
to be
you?
number one
Got it.
at everything that I do.
Got it.
Not at a cutthroat way,
Right.
but just in a, I want to do, if I'm going to do something, I want to be the person that people think of when it comes to that.
It's so funny. I have a similar thing where I don't do things unless I plan on getting really good at them.
Yeah.
So like people ask, oh, do you play golf? Like, no, I'm not opposed to golf. But if I'm going to be a golfer, like I'm going to be a golfer. I'm going to golf like 2 or 3 days a week.
Yeah.
I want to be good at it. It's not fun for me to go out like every couple times a year and just suck at it.
Yeah, no.
Like that's not fun. I get mad. My competitive nature makes me mad at that type of interaction. So I'm like, no, I just don't do it unless I'm going to absolutely, it becomes part of my personality.
Exactly.
Right.
I have a no options mentality.
Right.
So it's either you're going to do it 100% or you shouldn't do it.
So how is that parlayed into your real estate career? Because you're relatively new to the real estate industry.
Yeah, I just had my 1-year anniversary of.
You're not relatively new. You are new.
Yeah, I'm a real estate baby.
Okay.
So yeah, for me, I wanted to do something where I could truly help people. Right. So fitness was that.
Right.
But then I had young kids, and it's just, I can't be in a gym for 10 hours a day. And then also do it for myself.
That's a complete lifestyle. Like I think we talked about this before. Like I was involved in like the CrossFit thing for, this is years, forever ago.
Yeah.
And how it helped run some gyms, and it was incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
It was such hard work. And it was one of those things where you just you had to be 100% in it for 24/7.
Yeah.
You had to be who you were. And if you varied from that at all, then things start to fall apart.
Yeah.
I feel like that's true. I think I'm sure there's a study somewhere about like the burnout in like small boutique gym ownership. It probably doesn't last longer than 5 years on average, because you just get burned out. There's your key instructor doesn't show up, and then guess what? You were there teaching, and then
not at a normal hour. Like,
no,
it could be
it's
you're
before,
getting a call at 4:50 a.m.
Totally.
and you need to show up somewhere in 10 minutes.
And it's not sustainable for most people. So anyway,
Yeah.
So your competitive nature, like,
Yes.
that's just kind of part of your DNA.
Yeah.
Super competitive soccer player, that turns into a successful career in fitness, and that evolves when you get the burnout, like everyone does in the fitness industry, into also wanting to compete, but you get into real estate. Why real estate as opposed to, I don't know, something else?
Literally anything else. I think the sales component.
Okay.
So I really, really, really like to make sales.
Okay.
I think it's something measurable. But with real estate, I think that you get to be this connector, right? So if I know 15 different people that I can pull into one transaction, whether it's I'm making phone calls to people that I know somebody, or I know the best contractor in town, or I want to be the person that says, oh, I have a guy for that, right? And so in real estate, you get to be that.
Right.
And then you also get to be the dreamer, right? So I like to think really big. I can see the potential in a lot of things, and I like to be the dreamer, and I like to connect the person to who can make it the reality. I don't necessarily want to be the one developing it.
Sure.
Right. So when you're the agent, you get to help find the people who have the dream, find the product, and then pull the entire team together.
Yeah. I think that's really well stated. And I also think that it's one of those deals where people live is centrally important to them. Right. And it tells you a lot about who they are and what's important to them. Mm-hmm. Like you walk into someone's house, you can kind of know what they're about.
Yeah.
Right. And what their priorities are, where their heart is, how they spend their time and energy, where they spend their money, right? All these other things. So if you're the person who is adjacent and making things happen, like the facilitator for the thing that is the most important to most people, which is like where their family lives, right? Like that's a pretty powerful, important role to play in someone's life.
Very.
Right?
Or, it's, a lot of my clientele, sometimes it's not somewhere that they are going to live. It's somewhere there where they are going to invest a lot of money and they're going to expect a big return on it.
Interesting.
Right.
So that's a good point. So like what is your breakdown? Again, we're a year into this, right?
Yeah.
So this can evolve over time.
And it will, and it already has.
Right. So is it mostly first-time home buyers, investors, like builders? Like what is your book of business look like?
So, I'm really, really into short-term rentals. Right. So that is kind of how I segued into real estate was.
Right. Didn't you had
rentals.
you had a stint as a property manager?
Yep, exactly.
Right.
And actually, I gave myself 1 year to do real estate full time. And you and I've talked about this. Going into that, there was not a fiscal goal.
Right.
The entire goal for 1 year, 365 days.
Yeah. So I want you to state that because this is something that I thought about a lot after we had coffee, which was, so I'll be quiet. So tell me that story again, because I think it's really important to understand. And like, if you're new to the real estate industry, if you are, just thinking about how you're going to enter the market, or maybe you've been experienced in the market and you're trying to reinvent yourself because the market is different and it's harder now. Listen to what Savannah's about to say, because I think this is super, super critical and super important. So go ahead. I'll be quiet.
The floor.
Yes.
Again, it goes back to that identity thing, right? Of leaving soccer saying, I want to be known for more. I want to do more. Then I'm leaving fitness. Okay. How do I rebrand myself? Because my entire identity within Sonoma and Napa, right? So Sonoma County is massive. Napa County is also massive. My entire 100% identity was wrapped up in fitness through and through. And so when I made that pivot to real estate, I decided to go into it. I did not set a fiscal goal for the first 5 years. So for me, I'm still on and in that walk of I'm not setting a fiscal goal.
So most agents set a goal of X amount of units, X amount of income, X amount of units sold.
Yep.
What was your goal?
My goal was to spend 1 year making sure that everybody who knew my name knew that I was in real estate.
Okay, say that one more time. So your entire goal was not to sell houses, was not to, have a certain number of conversations.
Yeah.
It was to make sure that every person that knew who you knows you knows that you sell real estate.
Absolutely.
Okay. So this is a leading indicator conversation where most people set goals at the bottom of the funnel. The goal is to sell X amount of houses.
Right.
That's the finished product. That's the result. I think it's really, really important. And if you're, again, hopefully people listening to this understand how important this is. The better goal is what you just said, is to set the goal at what you actually can control. You can't control how many houses sell. There's too many market factors that are out of your control. What you can control is making sure that you every single day wake up and say, I'm going to make sure that everyone that I contact, everyone that I meet, everyone who knows me, knows that I am a real estate expert and that I can help them.
Yeah. That was it.
Okay.
And obviously there was a byproduct of it, right? So again, the goal was not to sell houses. Would I have loved to do that? 1,000%. That's kind of the whole thing, right?
That's the objective.
Is to sell houses. But I was happy with just knowing that if I could remind and convince and remind and pound into everyone that I was a real estate agent and that I was here to make waves, right? I'm not coming into this to be part-time or, make a couple deals here and there to just like have a vacation. This is that no options mentality. I decided to do this. I decided to stop making money, right? I was in a position where I was making a decent amount of money doing property management and working with a friend. So I wasn't in an uncomfortable position. But I thought, my baby was 3 months old, my third child. And I said, if not now, when? And I just decided to bet on myself and go all in.
I'm smiling and laughing because I posted a video. This was December of 2019. I remember this very specifically because my middle daughter was born in September. So she was 3 months old.
Yeah.
And in the video, I'll put it in the show notes here so people can reference it. But I am in our house and I'm holding my 3-month-old, and we just made a decision to change some things in our business. And the whole conversation was, if not now, when? You got a lot going on in your life. You got kids, you have family, you have all these other things. And I had that exact conversation with myself that you had, which was, if I'm not going to do it now, when am I ever going to do it? When am I ever going to fully go for it and really do it?
Yeah.
Right. And it was the best decision I ever made. It was really hard.
Yeah.
And in last week's podcast with Rob Tomasello that posted last week, we talked about this moment where you're on solid ground that you know, and there's a moment where you have to decide to jump over the nothingness and be weightless for that moment.
Yeah.
And that is the moment of panic and you're unsure and everything else. But you have to believe that you take that leap of faith and you're going to land on solid ground on the other side.
Right.
But you don't know what's there. You don't know if that's going to be able to hold you. You don't know if you can jump that far, but you just have to believe that you can and then make the damn decision to do it. Right?
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm just like, sorry, you just took me back to that moment. I remember watching that video in, like maybe a year after I posted it and going, oh man, that was really cool. I'm really glad I documented that. And then you literally said what I said in the video. So we'll put that in the show notes because that's cool. So either you've been watching my videos, which I appreciate you doing, or we just had that same kind of moment there. So you had that kind of entrepreneurial stroke, right? Where you're just like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this on my own.
Yeah. And I just, again, it was not to come in and be like everyone else. I'm okay going in and risking being different, or, a lot of the feedback at first from, because we have to also understand the demographic of agents in Sonoma.
Okay.
I am 31 years old. I think probably the average age, I do not know that this is fact, but I'm just going to go ahead and assume based off of what I see in the MLS meeting that like the average agent is 60 years old.
There's a lot of gray hair in that room for sure.
There is, and they're
cool,
great at their
right?
job,
yeah,
right? And there's a reason that they're still in the room, and there's a reason that they're still getting the listings, and there's a reason that they're still in the business and they're being successful. So that's not to discredit what they're doing.
Well, it speaks to the flexibility of the industry, right? You could be a successful agent who does a couple deals a year. Maybe you're coming off of a career where you're doing 50 transactions a year.
Yeah,
that's hard to do for years and years and years. So maybe you were that person, and now you're still in the industry. You're just doing it differently, and that's okay. You can ebb and flow in and out of the industry as your life permits. So anyway, keep going.
Yeah. So my idea in going into this was, well, I'm going to use social media. It is a free resource, and I already had some connection, but I started a new Instagram from ground up, and that was obviously not related to fitness and all of those things. And I said, I'm just going to make sure that everyone knows that I do real estate. And so I mainly did that through Instagram, but also just being out in the community. I coach soccer for my kids. I am a commissioner for the city of Sonoma. So there's plenty of things that I do to be involved in the community. And
what is the commissioner what does that mean?
Oh, it's a commission position for Parks, Rec, and open spaces.
Okay. So, like on city,
like
city council thing. Okay. So you're like
Leslie Knope from Parks and Rec.
I never watched that show.
You obviously
I'm an Office person. I like The Office, and Parks and Rec seemed like the knockoff Office. Am I wrong?
It could be. I'm not an Office person.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe that's the difference.
So that's Anyway.
We found our key difference here.
Yeah,
between the two.
That's okay. I never watched Parks and Rec. I was more like a How I Met Your Mother, The Office.
Tracks.
That type of thing. Yeah.
So I do plenty of things in the community, but again, I was going to utilize social media to make sure that people knew that I was in real estate because it's free and I can wake up and make silly videos or, give people kind of a glimpse into how I run business. And I think the most important piece of that was I wanted people who, when they meet me, feel like they already know me. Right. So you kind of probably already had an idea of what my personality was going to be like and tone, verbiage, that kind of thing. So I want people to feel like their household name, but also like they kind of have some insight into
Right.
who I am, how I live my life, you know.
Well, it's great because you get mass exposure, right? It's like the one-to-many strategy,
Yeah.
right? Having one-on-one conversations is great, but having one message that you're able to broadcast like we're doing right now,
Yeah.
and multiple people can interact with you, which is it's really fun. And then you run into people in real life and they're like, I know you from the internet. And
Yeah.
You're like, cool, you know, and it just like it accelerates the speed of connection. Right. So I feel like when we got together, we had been connected on social for some time, and I kind of already knew who you were without having ever really talked to you. And we got together and it was like, yeah, we can skip all the, get to know you stuff and let's just talk about what we're interested in.
Right.
Which is
Because
cool.
I also have no interest in that. And I think that that's part of, in real estate, you either have it or you don't.
What do you mean?
You can't teach someone how to be a people person.
Okay.
Right? So when people ask me, man, how did you get so successful in real estate so quickly? It is not that I know every rule in real estate. It is not that I have done 1,000 transactions and have seen this plethora of, situations that happen in real estate.
Sure.
It's more, do people trust you? Are you worthy of them trusting you? Right? Do you live your life in a way that people can actually trust you? Not saying one thing on social media and being another.
Right.
But can you really be honest, give them answers even when they don't want to hear it, but also deliver it in, a way that they can digest?
Sure.
Because in real estate, there's a lot of bad news, right? There's a lot of ups, there's a lot of downs.
It's challenging.
Yay, your
it's
offer is
stressful.
accepted.
Yeah.
Oh no, there's $100,000 worth of foundation work. There's a lot of ups and downs, and there's a lot of things, and it's a lot of money.
Right.
We're not talking about someone lending you $5 and like betting on you. This is someone coming to you saying, I have this amount of money in my savings account. I'm going to bank on you getting me the best deal for my family.
Mm-hmm.
Can you do that? Right? And so they're trusting you with everything that they have generally. Right?
No, it's true.
And whether it's, a $500,000 buyer or a $16 million buyer, right? Because it varies. They're trusting you with what they have. And that should not be taken lightly either, right?
Right.
So I just want to live super authentically. I want people to know who I am before they meet me. And a lot of people have already met me, right? And they're just reconnecting with me in a different way.
Sure.
But it's just demonstrating that I am trustworthy. I will do what I say I'm going to do because that's all that I have.
Right.
All that I have is my word.
Well, the cool thing is like your prior business, right? You get to know people intimately and they have to know you, like you, and trust you to like continue to come back and, pay for your services at the gym or whatever, right? So you're able to take that kind of foundation of trust and knowing and it's convertible, right? Like trust, I should say trust can be transferable if you do it right. So you can take the trust you've already established with someone from knowing them outside of real estate, and you can like transfer that into the real estate world.
Right.
And you don't have to go and build rapport. You've already built the rapport. You just have to show them and prove to them that you're an expert and that you can act on their behalf in a way that is different and what's the word I'm looking for? Is in line with their needs, right? Because like they can know you and like you all you want, but if they don't believe that you know what you're doing, they'll be like, hey, call me in 2 years when you've got your stuff figured out, right? Which is fine. That's a totally fine reaction. But you do have to bridge that gap to be like, hey, I know that you know me through my fitness training or through short-term rentals or whatever it is. But I actually have this expertise and I can prove to you and show you how. Yeah. And then that builds momentum.
Right. Well, and so, momentum, right? It took one person. So in that step saying, okay, I'm going to spend a year for people to know that I do real estate, whether a deal happens or not.
Yep.
3 months in, there's a deal.
So it took you 3 months.
3 months.
You started day one, you and your cell phone and your MacBook.
Yeah.
And that was it.
That was it.
And you're like, hey, I'm going to start a new Instagram. My goal is to make sure everyone knows that I'm in real estate now. Mm-hmm. And it took 3 months to get your first deal.
3 months to write my first offer.
Okay. And then when did the second deal happen?
Like 2 weeks after that.
And then the third one?
A week after that.
Right. So again, if you're listening, and you're struggling in your business, number one step for anybody, mortgage, real estate, insurance, whatever you're selling, if you're in sales, is just to make sure everyone that you know knows what you do and what you sell.
Right.
And the reality is that people will gravitate towards you because they want to support you. If you're like a likable person that people like want to support, right? They'll find a way to utilize you.
Right.
Right. It might not be them. It might be their friend. It might be their cousin. It might be their coworker. But if you are a secret agent and you don't tell anyone that what you're doing, you will fail.
Yeah.
Right. The awareness is the number one thing that we can do. Tell everyone that you know. Write some handwritten letters. Make some birthday phone calls. However you want to do it, make a social media post. I don't care what you do. Just make sure that everyone that you come in contact with knows what you do. That's it.
Super simple.
Super simple.
It's so simple.
So do it.
And then in there, you get your momentum and you start cruising, and one deal turns into 3 deals, turns into 5 deals, turns into just this like snowball. And again, that doesn't work if you're actually not good at what you do. Like
You'll get
none
found
of this
out.
works if I actually don't know what I'm doing in real estate.
Right.
Luckily for me, I'm intelligent, and I'm willing also to say, you know what, I don't know the answer to that. I'm going to go find it and let's circle back to it.
Well, I think that's part of the competitive nature.
Yeah.
Right. Like at a certain age playing soccer, you have certain expectations of what you're able to do.
Right.
Right. Like what the style of gameplay should look like looks different at under 10s as it does under 16s.
Yeah.
Right. But you have to be willing to go, okay, it's time for me to step up and learn. Right. It's time for me to, even though I'm really good at this way that we're playing the game now, I need to evolve.
Yeah.
Right. And like continuous learning, continuous change, and being willing to say, I don't know the answer. Let me go figure it out. And then read up on it, talk to some other person who knows. And that kind of leads into a conversation we were having about all these new forms and all these new, changes in the real estate world after this commission settlement that's happening.
Right.
So like the idea that you have to go, and so if you're not aware, there's a big old lawsuit, multiple lawsuits, I should say, that the National Association of Realtors has settled, and the result, and we won't get into the details of that. You can go online and Google it and do the thing. But the result is that there's a bunch of new forms that are coming out that are explaining the agent commissions and agency. Like, what is agency? When you say you're a real estate agent, what does that actually mean to the consumer?
Right.
And we're asking consumers to sign a document that basically says, this person, this agent is going to represent me for an indefinite or specific amount of time.
Right.
And in exchange for their expertise and their time, I'm going to pay them X amount of dollars or a percentage of the transaction.
Right.
Either out of pocket, I'm going to physically write them a check, right? Or through the financing it through the transaction where I purchase real estate. And if I don't, the agent can sue me in small claims court or whatever it is to get their money.
Right.
Like, you owe them. Right. That's a really hard conversation to have with someone, even if you're like super close with them.
Right.
But and let alone someone that you maybe have just met through a referral. So talk to me about that a little bit, and kind of give me your ideas around how that's going to go. But one, I just want to make sure that I stay on the record. I think that it is a very dangerous path that we're going on.
Agreed.
I think that it is actually not to the benefit of the consumer at the end of the day. And I think that this is step one in the process, and this is an overcorrection, and then we're going to have some reprieve from this at some point, because it's honestly kind of crazy what we're asking the consumer to do. And I think the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB, will get involved at a certain point and say, once the first person who didn't understand the agency agreement signs it and winds up getting sued and winds up paying 2 sets of commission, one to the person who actually represented them and one to the person that they signed the agreement with, I think the CFPB steps in and says, this actually hurts the consumer. We're going to have to rethink this. But anyway.
I think it goes a little bit deeper than that, right?
Okay.
So when I think about being a consumer, right, I think that it is important that we as agents are having conversations with people about how we get paid, right? Lawyers do it.
It shouldn't be a mystery.
It shouldn't be a mystery how people get paid. However, people do need to get paid, right? It is not a nonprofit business.
Well, I think the important thing is that you don't have to use a realtor.
You don't.
You don't. There's no law that says if you want to buy a house, you must use a realtor with a registered R thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't. You can self-represent. You can also self-represent when you sell. That is 100% possible. If you don't want to pay agent commissions, represent yourself. But there's a reason why people don't.
Because they'd be wrapped up in lawsuits themselves or leaving themselves super vulnerable.
Right.
Right? There are a lot of things in real estate transactions that people who have been doing it for 40 years are coming up against every day.
Sure.
Right? And you should absolutely be represented, right? Your interest in a real estate transaction should be protected by somebody who is working on your behalf.
Correct.
Right? So if you're a buyer,
Correct.
you should 100% have someone who's on your side trying to get you the best deal possible.
Yes. Agreed.
Right? And if you're a seller, you should have someone who's 100% on your side to get you the most money out of that transaction, if that's what they want.
I guess
Which I would assume.
most money, but I would also say to achieve your goal,
Right.
whatever that is. Sometimes the most money is not the goal. Sometimes it's selling it to the right family,
Yes.
right? But whatever that goal is, it's to help you best achieve your goal
Right.
in buying or selling real estate.
Absolutely. And so what I think we're doing is we're putting the consumer, the buyer, at risk of, if you're a first-time home buyer and you're already struggling to get your down payment for your house, I don't know where you're going to be able to make up and find that cost. So they're going to go directly to the listing agent, whose job, again, is to 100% represent that seller and their goal. So what we're doing is we're putting that buyer at risk of going in and dealing with somebody whose job is not to get them the best deal.
This is where I think, again, this is just a Dan opinion. I think that dual agency representing both the buyer and the seller should be legal. And I'll stand on that. And I know that people do that. They represent both. And no offense to anyone who has done that, but I don't think that it is possible for you to represent both the buyer and the seller in good faith. I don't think that that's part of it's not physically possible for you to genuinely best represent both parties.
Yeah, unless the two parties have somehow come into agreement with one another.
That's a little bit different because you're facilitating.
Right.
I would have a carve out for that thing. If the parties have already come to an agreement and you're there to facilitate to make sure everything is done properly,
Right.
I think that is probably okay. I would put an asterisk next to my statement for that.
Generally.
But in general, I don't think that dual agency should be allowed.
Yeah. I think it just leaves a lot of room for someone to be misrepresented.
I agree. And I think, honestly, that's I'll bet you $1 that there's a lawsuit that comes out. The next lawsuit will be about dual agency. Because if you are the buyer or the seller, I don't think either party gets a fair shake in that deal. So if you're a buyer, you may have overpaid if you used the listing agent because their duty is to the seller.
Right. And I think someone might argue with you saying, well, if a buyer's willing to pay it, then it's never overpaying.
I get that. But I
understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I think so.
There's caveats to everything.
So yes, the value of the home, this is where I get stuck on, like when we have appraisers.
Yeah.
The value of the home is where the buyer is willing to buy and the seller is willing to sell. And when those two lines cross, that is by definition the value.
Right.
It doesn't matter what an appraiser says. It doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter what I say. When the people who are actually spending the money decide to buy and sell, where those lines cross on the chart, that is the value.
I agree.
Done. No, there's no debate. That is economics.
Right.
That said, we do have appraisers who come out to validate that information and do everything else. But I do think that I think there's a lawsuit that's coming. I don't know for sure, but my bet is that there's going to be a dual agency lawsuit that comes out that looks a lot like the agency commission lawsuit, and we'll probably see dual agency go away.
Well,
which is fine with me.
And I think what people also need to understand is that if we're now going into, right, so when we're at these MLS meetings now, or when a property's listed, let's say you're representing the seller, you know what you're making, you know what the commission is because you were the one who created the contract saying, and getting your seller to agree or not agree,
Right.
to, yes, we are going to provide the buying agent with commission, or you might be encouraging them not to, which I don't think that's going to happen a lot. I think there will be sellers that really push back on agents and want to not have to pay that buyer's commission.
It's a seller-driven conversation, I think.
I think so too.
Yeah.
But I think where there's going to be a lot of issues is that they're wanting agents, to not be coercive when it comes to commission. But now you're taking the guaranteed commission, right? It's full transparency. When I look up a property right now on the MLS, I see it's 2.5%, it's 3%, it's 2%. I know what I'm going to make on it. I don't have to have a secret conversation with anyone and say, hey, blink twice if there's going to be a buyer's commission, right? So now what they're doing is they're actually putting that scarcity mindset into agents, where we're not allowed to say it in the MLS meetings when we're presenting a property. We're having to have side conversations. We're actually making it a closeted conversation between agents when, as it currently sits, it's not.
It shouldn't be a secret. No, it shouldn't be a secret. I think part of the deal, so here's, again, Dan's opinion.
Yeah.
I think this hurts the first-time home buyers. I think this hurts FHA and VA buyers. I think this hurts the communities that have been traditionally disenfranchised, that have been pushed out of the real estate conversation because of their socioeconomic status, the color of their skin, their race, ethnicity. I think that's who suffers the most in this, unfortunately. I am totally okay if you're going to be transacting on a $10 million house and you want to say, I'm listing my house for $10 million. I'm a rich guy, rich person, rich family, individual, a rich individual. And I'm going to have another rich individual buy my house. You know what? Other rich person, why don't you figure out how you're going to pay your agent? That's really none of my business, because you're probably paying all cash or coming down with millions of dollars down. I think that doesn't hurt that buyer or seller. I think that's totally fine for them to negotiate, because they're a more sophisticated, higher end, more affluent buyer that has the money available to figure out what's the best commission split for them, how they want to pay their real estate person.
Right.
That's not happening with the first-time home buyer putting down 3%.
Yeah.
That person is the one who says, actually, now I can't afford to become a homeowner because I can't pay the 3% down and a 2.5% commission. I don't have that.
Yeah.
It's going to take me years to save that amount of money. So what this does is it puts more people in the renter class and less people as homeowners, which is not to the benefit of the consumer. Because what we know is that there is a big bold line in our population. If you are above the line where you become a homeowner, you have the ability to generate substantial wealth, generational wealth for your family. And if you are below that line and you do not get out of the renter class and you stay in the renter class, you do not have generational wealth creation power, and you wind up being in poverty. That is 100% fact. Fact check me. That is the definitive thing that we need to do, is to create more home ownership, especially in the disenfranchised populations and minorities, to help them get out of the renter class and be able to pass on generational wealth. Why right now we're seeing huge amounts of gift funds being given from an older generation to a younger generation. Why? Because those people were able to buy houses in Marin and San Francisco that they bought for like $100K, that are now worth $4 million, and they're selling them to tech billionaires or millionaires, whatever. And they're able to take those dollars that they only earned because they were fortunate enough to buy that real estate in 1950, right? And they're taking those gains and they're passing them on generationally. If your grandparents or great-grandparents weren't able to buy those houses because they were brown or black or disenfranchised or female, you couldn't buy a house as a single female, right? In that time. Crazy. That not that long ago. You don't have the benefit of getting that generational wealth. So you are behind. It's not fair. It's a broken system. I'm totally on my stump right now. And it should be fixed. So this lawsuit hurts those people even more. Who this doesn't hurt is the people who are already going to be homeowners because they have massive amounts of cash and wealth. They don't care about this. This is a non-starter for them.
And for them, it's going to be reflected in price, right? So if we're talking about buyers over a certain threshold, that conversation of, hey, there's a potential that this seller might not be, paying out commissions to the buy side.
Yep.
And then that's another conversation that we're having with our buyers. And I think that there is a threshold where it makes sense, where we'll start probably seeing flat fees for agents, right? But again, they do have more of that ability to negotiate on their own behalf of like, hey, I'm willing to pay you this much for this property.
Yeah. I'll pay you a flat fee of $50,000 to represent me. I'm going to buy a $10 million house.
Yeah.
I think there are agents that will be like, let's go.
Right.
Right. No problem. I also think that there's going to be a solution that comes out that says, hey, for $1,500, I'll fill the paperwork for you. Don't ask me to do anything else. I won't open doors for you. I won't connect you with a contractor, but I'll fill out the paperwork.
But is that a benefit?
It's not a benefit. It actually puts them at bigger risk.
Absolutely.
Because there's no one there to explain it to them.
Well, and I've had someone say, well, why do I need a real estate agent?
You don't.
And I just said, no, I hear you, right? I understand that you're questioning this profession as a whole.
Sure.
Do you know a home inspector?
Right.
Can you call him right now? You don't have that? Okay. I have that. And here's these 150 page reports that I'm reading through. Granted, I'm not a contractor, right? But I can see the line items and I see where these issues are coming from. I have 15 contacts right now that I can call to say, hey, Rich, can you come look at this property and get under the house like now?
Right.
Right. So we're able to advocate and help people really understand the mess that they're also getting into, which I think is a value add. It is not a value add for an agent to say, sign this paper, I'm going to represent you from now until forever. Go find your house on Zillow.
Right.
Go find it on Realtor.com.
Call me when you find it.
Call me when you're ready.
Yep.
Also, I'm going to charge you 2.5% of whatever that is.
So I think that agent goes out of business, and that's okay. And I'm happy for that agent to go out of business.
Me too.
To be honest with you, because I want the profession to be filled with caring, compassionate, empathetic people who really care about what their buyers are buying. Right. Speaking on the buyer side, because that's where I spend most of my time, and take the time to get intimately familiar with the property and explain to the average consumer who does not know. They're not a contractor.
Right.
They're not a drywall expert. They don't know about foundations. They're not a soils expert. They don't know anything. They're just normal people.
Yeah.
And help them make a good financial decision for them, for their family to have a safe place to be. That's it.
And advocate for them.
And totally. And only act on their behalf.
Right.
Like that's where this should wind up. But my fear, like I said earlier, my fear is that it pushes the people who are on the margin fully on the other side, because they're going to go, I don't have an extra $20,000 and I don't know how I'm going to get it. And so the choice is either to not become a homeowner or to put yourself in a more uncomfortable financial position by, borrowing against a 401k or doing other things that like maybe are not actually that great for you.
Right.
Right. And I just think that it's, I think that's I don't even know if it's well-intentioned. I think it was a well-intentioned idea to bring light to the commissions, but it's always been known.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's
weird.
always been a negotiable too. I think
Yeah.
it's shining light on something that probably if we were going to do some kind of inventory on the real estate business and just, agents in general, it probably is a conversation that should have been more transparent in some regard. I don't know, the way that I don't go to listing agreements or listing appointments with other agents, so I don't know what their level of transparency is, but it definitely has brought up for me, that I need to really be able to explain, 1, how this works, 2, how it benefits them, but 3, I have to explain why me, right? So those people that were saying that are like, yeah, find your property on Zillow, call me, it's creating, they're going to go out. Yeah. It's not going to work. Actually, there'll be the cheap ones where you get the $1,500 deal. We'll write it. We'll do this. We'll do that. What it's going to leave room for is agents who know their value and can tell you, you know what, you're actually probably going to see properties that come on quicker, right? But where I'm going to add value is I'm going to be making phone calls on your behalf to find you the perfect thing. I'm not going to try and put a round peg in a square hole and try and squeeze you into something that's on market. I'm going to do whatever I can do within my power to find you the perfect property, whether it's on the market or not.
Yeah.
Or I am going to be able to negotiate a deal for you that puts you in the best position forward, where you're not overspending.
And here's the deal. This is a relationship business.
Yeah.
We get a disproportionate amount of deals done because I have great connections and I know agents and I do what I say I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So when I call a listing agent on behalf of one of my buyers and I say, hey, so-and-so, like, this is our deal. This is what we've got. Mm-hmm. How are we looking? What do you need from me? What are the needs of this seller? How can we position ourselves better? Like, what do you need from me as the lender? We play a pretty important role.
Yep.
Right? So like, do we need to close faster? Do we need to close slower? Like, what do we need to do to help you out?
Right.
How can we make this beneficial for everyone? Mm-hmm. And just that conversation alone helps us win. Like, just the fact that we call the listing agent, I think wins us more deals than anything. But having that frank conversation, we're able to bridge gaps.
Yep.
I'm able to go, hey, maybe the buyer's agent didn't find this out, but in my conversation, I found out that the seller needs a rent back.
Yeah.
So like, maybe we throw that into our offer and go, hey, let's put in a 15-day free rent back, and maybe that is the deal, that the thing that puts us over the top.
Right.
And then we're getting a house that we wouldn't have otherwise got, and that's the reason why.
Yeah.
So maybe not one of the reasons why.
Basically and that goes back to the being a people person. You have it or you don't. You're doing that on your end. I'm also doing that on my end, right? I'm calling every agent who wants to work with me, right? They know, Savannah's calling, she has a buyer. What can I go out and find? Right? It is a two-way street. It's not one agent and one agent, right? We're not on these combative ends. It's going to take
that collaboration.
Everyone.
That collaboration is really fun. And I've been part of some transactions where, agents have relationships with each other. They talk to each other. They're friends. They're friendly. And it's like, oh, hey, I know that so-and-so has an off-market deal, and let's like chain these things together, and it becomes like deal dominoes where like you're able to go, okay, this buyer can buy this house, and then you kind of shake everything out. And those are the most fun because you're able to like have really great conversations, understand the needs, and then make the connection.
Yep.
Yeah.
But that's the whole job. And the thing is also of just being successful or not in the business is, if you don't want to win in real estate, be a shitty person, right? Say things, don't follow through. Live what I always have this vision of just being like super close-fisted, right? Walk around town thinking, this is mine. These clients are mine. Don't talk to this person. That's my client. They're living in that mentality of, I need to keep what I have, not I need to grow what I have, right? You have to be in that growth, and you have to be okay letting people go, right? People are going to want to work with you because they want to work with you. And I'm not in the business, certainly, and which is why I don't like the buyer rep agreement. I'm not in the business of forcing someone to work with me.
Right.
I want you to call me and say, hey, Sav, let's do this deal together. What can you do for me?
Yeah.
That's all I want.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the success lies.
And it makes the job, a stressful job, way more enjoyable when you're working with people that you really like.
Yeah.
And I remember early in my career, I would work with anybody. I would work with the meanest, jerkiest jerks in the world because I was just trying to get paid, trying to make a living. And it was like holding on to a deal. I'm like, I'm going to strangle this thing and put it in a sleeper hold essentially because I don't want it to get away.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, I don't want to work with people who are not nice. And it sucks when you wind up like sometimes you get into a transaction and someone's like a real, like not kind.
Yeah.
And you like try to like be kind to them, but they're not appreciative. They're not grateful.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't feel good. It's like, don't use me.
Right.
And go somewhere else. Find someone else to say yes.
Those are hard
I don't want to do
deals.
that.
Those are hard
It's not
deals.
worth it.
No.
And like your partners too.
Yeah.
I had some, past, I don't think they're in the business anymore, but some past realtors I've worked with, and they're just really difficult people. It's like, this doesn't feel good. I will wake up in the morning. I want to wake up in the morning going, I get to hang out with Savannah today.
Yeah.
How fun is that?
Yeah.
I get to see Rob today.
Right.
I get to go talk to Brent. Like those are really awesome days.
Yeah.
And that's the best part of the job.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
I agree.
We just went on, like I think we were at like almost an hour already, and we just really started scratching. Yeah, we've been tangenting off of tangents. So 1 year in the business, I just want to recap. This is really important. So 1 year in the business, make sure everyone knows what you're doing,
Yep.
parlaying that your kind of competitive energy and spirit from prior careers into this real estate thing.
Yep.
You're finding immense success.
Yep.
You love W real estate.
Love W real estate.
And you guys are relatively small presence in Sonoma, right? They're like heavy Santa Rosa.
Heavy. Oh yeah, I would say heavier Santa Rosa, Healdsburg.
Yeah.
You know, all of those areas, but definitely building into Sonoma. And I think that we're getting a bigger and bigger name. I mean, I'm hoping that if I have anything to do with it, it will be the household name.
Yeah,
right,
so
in
W's
Sonoma.
growing. So W is based out of Santa Rosa, right?
Yep.
On Bicentennial. So they, like you said, Healdsburg, Windsor, they've got a big office. Santa Rosa, kind of all the way down. Airport, they're all, and they just started a Petaluma location. Todd Mendoza is there now. Shout out to Todd.
I know.
And really like that guy.
I know, he's a good guy.
Todd and I were on the Chamber of Commerce, Petaluma Area Chamber of Commerce board together for a bunch of years. So really like Todd.
Mhm.
And then you've got the Sonoma location. So you're
Yeah.
kind of like moving south, which is
And
cool.
we're in Napa.
Napa.
Yeah.
Okay. South and east.
Yeah.
Got it.
So I think we're trying to build, further in that direction. And I think what I like most about W or why, we'll say why W, right? And I'm not going to sell anyone. I can't convince anyone to come to W. That's, not my, it's not my job necessarily.
Sure.
I take it pretty seriously because it is, my brokerage family and where I'm at.
Sure.
And I believe in what they're doing. But for me, I did not, again, if I was going to bet on myself and say, I'm going to go do this full time and I'm going to do it. Like, I'm not going to try and ride the coattails of anyone. I'm going to go out and on my own and create my own name. My worst fear was going into a big store name, like,
Mm-hmm. I know what you're saying.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Sotheby's Compass, something like that.
Yeah.
And
Great
then-
brokerages for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right?
But with very successful agents,
Totally.
right? And who any of us would want to emulate our business after.
Sure.
However, I don't want to be their assistant. I don't want to be, oh, Savannah, she works for so-and-so.
Right.
I want to be Savannah at W. And the idea would be to grow from there. I came here to make waves. I didn't come to hide behind the shadows of someone and hopefully be able to break out of it one day. It's like, no, I want to be the forefront from the beginning and not have to climb my way out of someone's shadow. And so W kind of provided that position for me, especially at a small brokerage in Sonoma, right, where
Right.
there's not many agents.
Yeah.
But the agents that are there are doing amazing deals. And so we're able to collaborate really well.
Awesome.
They've got, mentorship programs and all those things. But then you also have the direct line to Randy Waller,
Right.
right?
We didn't have Randy on the show. He hasn't been on the show. It's been like, we're 2 years into the podcast now. I haven't had Randy on the show. I need to call him.
He's like the elusive Randy Waller,
I know.
right?
That's I'll get him
Schedule
on there.
is Exponential.
I'll be like, hey, I had Savannah on the show. She said that you wanted to come on.
Yeah, throw me under. But, it's like, it's the direct line. I don't have to search to find an answer
Sure.
through 50 people. I'm calling my office manager, and if in the rare occasion that she doesn't know, I know who my next call is,
Yeah.
right? And I have their support in everything and anything,
There you go.
which is all you can essentially ask for. So, yeah, we're building out there. Love W. And again, just now working towards kind of that 5-year goal of not necessarily always setting a fiscal goal. I mean, I do have one going into this year
Okay.
because of the success that I did find, right? So kind of reached that point where Savannah does real estate, right? That is now known. So that 365 of just pushing Savannah does real estate worked, right? I did 10.5 million in my first year, which was
incredible.
really actually like 6.5 months.
Wow.
So then I need to chase something,
Mhm.
and not for the sake of chasing it. And I'm not going to, do a deal just to do a deal. I want the right deal
Sure.
for the right person.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've set a goal this year, and I've got this massive whiteboard in my office where I kind of line everything up, and it's staring at me. And
I
if you
love a
don't say
whiteboard.
it,
Yeah,
if you don't say it and
Yeah.
you don't write it down, you're not going to do it.
totally. You got to be committed to that.
Yeah.
I love a whiteboard. I have a huge whiteboard in my office. I also have like a digital. I have too many whiteboards maybe
Yeah.
because I like to visualize things. So I'll like scribble out a bunch of stuff, and it might sit there for like months, but I see it every single day. It's like right over my computer screen, and it just helps me. It reminds me of like, do the daily disciplines, do the stuff that you need to do. And it's always in my face, which is great. Hey, I'm really excited that you came on the show, and I'm thrilled for you and to see where your career goes, and happy that we've connected. We'll have you back on the show to give us, some more insights. I would love to actually do a show about, lessons learned in the first year in real estate, and maybe have, you and someone else on. We'll just kind of banter about that. But thank you for being here. I'll make sure everyone knows how to find you on social. They'll be in the show notes. And anything else you want to say before we go?
Thank you for having me. Sorry it took so long.
No, it's great. You have three little kids. I have 3 little kids.
Buy, sell.
Schedules are crazy. We're running all over the place. I've got a day stacked of appointments after this, as I'm sure you do.
Absolutely.
But go sell some houses, and thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Savannah.
Stay up to date with Bay Area real estate. Hit subscribe now if you haven't already. Did you enjoy this episode? We love reviews in the Apple Podcasts app. We'll read yours on the show. This is By the Bay.
Lend an Ear Media.